going to talk about creating and maintaining habits. And most of us are familiar with the following quote. It's generally attributed to Aristotle, but it's more of a summation or a simplification of his actual quote, which is, but the idea is the same. We are made up of all of the things that we do, and if we want to be excellent, we need to have habits that will translate into excellence. Usually when we look to take on a new challenge or even just a daily task, we look for and try and find the motivation to embark on it and get it done. And at first it's really exciting. You start to prepare, you start to get excited about what the potential results might be, all the cool stuff you might need on the way to achieving that goal or that task, and then you dive in and get started. And you might be really motivated at first. You might be motivated for 2-3 days or 2 to 3 weeks, sometimes 2 to 3 months. But the problem is a lot of our big goals that we set are actually really, really hard. And they require a lot of change. And your motivation might not last, or you might falter, or you might have days where you just don't feel motivated at all. And then soon the task becomes daunting and you don't want to do it anymore. This is why we want to create habits instead of relying on motivation. And we need to make sure habits are about what we do. All of the planning in the world doesn't mean anything until we start doing something. So here's a quick guide to help us build and sustain habits. Start with a really small habit. Make it so easy you can't say no. You don't need motivation. You don't need willpower. Then increase your habit in small ways. Go just bump up to that next step. As you build up, you might need to break your habits into chunks. If your goal was to get better at push-ups and you're just adding 1 push-up a day, at some point it's going to be unmanageable to try to do 100 push-ups in a time. So instead you might do 10 sets of 10. You might do 5 sets of 10 in the morning and 5 sets of 10 in the afternoon. When you slip, get back on track quickly. The best swimmers in the world still make mistakes, they still have bad practices, and they still get off track. But they get back on track as quickly as possible. Try not to have 2 bad days in a row. Try not to have 2 bad practices in a row. What do you need to do to get back on track? And part of that is planning for failure. Don't know that failure is a possibility, but actually plan for it. Consider what might get in the way of you maintaining your habit and plan a workaround. And lastly, be patient. You want to stick to a pace you can sustain, and you're going to build up a lot slower than you think you might want to. New habits should feel easy, especially in the beginning. That's the point, that you don't need to be motivated. It's too easy to say no. If you want to do 8 dolphin kicks off of every wall, well, you got to start by doing 1 dolphin kick off every wall. And you might do 1 dolphin kick off every wall at every practice for a week or a month before you try 2. And at the end of the whole season, you might only get to 4 or 5 dolphin kicks off of every wall. And it may take you 2 seasons or 2 years to get to 8 dolphin kicks off every wall. And that's okay. Because if you try to scale up too quickly, if you try to go from 1 to 2 too quickly, or 2 to 5 too quickly, you're probably going to encounter some failure. And it's going to be really, really challenging. And it might even kill your desire to get to 8. And it's important to remember that creating that habit takes time. You can't overwrite a bad habit, but it's going to take time to create a new, stronger, good habit. What habits do you have now? And what habits do you want to start implementing?